Hello, I'm Barbara Sills Nevergold, co-founder of the Uncrowned Queens Institute. Welcome to They've Got Stories to Tell, conversations with uncrowned community builders. They've Got Stories to Tell builds on the Institute's original mini-documentary series we called Illuminations. Like Illuminations, this program will continue to bring you the inspiring and sometimes little-known stories of the women and men who have made a difference in their community through their contributions and accomplishments in the arts, business, healthcare, education, politics, media, advocacy, and so much more. This is our inaugural program, and I am delighted to have my friend, colleague, and Institute co-founder, Dr. Peggy Brooks-Bertram, as my first guest. So, Peggy, welcome to They've Got Stories to Tell.
Hey, I say welcome to you as well. I remember when we started this.
Absolutely. Well, you know, what can I say? 18, 19 years ago, we started Uncrowned Queens, and we've had so many projects that we've done to recognize and celebrate the accomplishments and the contributions of African American women and men to this community. But we're going to talk about that a little bit later in the program because you're a community builder too. And that's why I asked you to join me today to really talk about you as a community builder, sharing some information about yourself and your life before Uncrowned Queens. And of course, we're going to talk about your life after Uncrowned Queens as well.
Great.
So, let's start because I'm sure the viewers would really be interested in knowing a little bit about your early background and where you grew up and, where you went to school and all of that jazz.
Well, I'm from Baltimore, Maryland. I came here actually from White Plains, New York, because my husband and I moved from Baltimore, and he took a job in New York City with the American Cancer Society. And so we lived in White Plains while he did that. And we were there for about 4 years, I think. And he got an appointment at the University of Buffalo School of Medicine. And so we came here then. I think I arrived with the children, I think August 21st, 1986.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was a hot day, I'll tell you. And it wasn't much longer or later that I met you.
That's right. That's right.
Within
the year, I think.
At least within the year. And we were involved in all kinds of things together. We were involved in Art Eve's campaign.
Oh, yes.
All of them, many of them. Jesse Jackson's.
Presidential runs.
Yeah.
That's right.
And, oh my God, and I got involved with the school board, under Reville. And I was the chair of the Parent Advisory Council, the very first one that we set up.
Oh, right.
And I set up a number of committees, and I think you served on the health committee as well. And so we really go back a long time.
Yes, we do. But I'm going to take you back even further because we skipped over, Baltimore real quickly. And, tell me a little bit about your family, your early education, and not mentioning no dates in particular.
No.
We come from the same era, and certainly it was a time as you were growing up in Baltimore that segregation was still, the law of the land. So what was it like growing up in Baltimore during that period?
It really was very, very hard, and I'm writing another book called Life in the Alley House. And that's my life from about, birth to 8 to 13 years of age when we lived in, it was a segregated section where all the Negroes lived. And we lived actually in the shadow of Johns Hopkins University and the School of Medicine. And actually that's where I got my first job when I was 16. And so we were quite separated, the races, or so to say, the groups of people were quite separated from one another. There was the white section that was on the boulevard that led up to Johns Hopkins Medical Institutions, and it was the black sections who lived in the alley streets. And actually those original homes there were designed to be like the slave quarters for the boulevards that led up to the hospital.
Right.
And so when you looked at it, you'd see a long boulevard with trees and benches and all of that, and then the little streets off from it were still cobblestone. And they didn't have toilets in them, you know, so you had to go out to an outhouse. So those are my memories, you know, and I had a very large family. And and we lived in a house that was 12 feet by 8 feet, 2 stories, one packed on top of the other.
Well, we have that in common, coming from a large family. I know that on one of our book covers for Uncrowned Queens, there's a charming photo you have of you and your sister in front of your house, correct?
Yeah. And I remember when the so-called urban removal came into action, and in the 1960s in Baltimore, and all those houses were going to be torn down, and nobody asked us about it. It just said, you know, the bulldozers are coming through, and I remember that all the families went different places. Nobody came in to relocate you, so to say. You know, you were on your own, and I remember my father was sick at the time. He was an alcoholic, and we were preparing to leave him because he'd gone to the hospital Crownsville State Hospital, to be taken care of, and he did okay for a while, and then he relapsed, and so things were getting so hard, and we lost the house we lived in. And my sister, thank God, and bless her soul, she's passed away now, but my sister Margie took the entire family into her house. She had just gotten married, and I think I was in about the 5th or 6th grade then. It was very hard.
Well, it's interesting. We overcome a lot of things in our lives that certainly have impacted who we are, and so, you know, part of the conversation that we're having today, you know, is to kind of provide people with an understanding of how our early lives shaped who we are now, and, you know, have impacted the kinds of things that we do. And
I think the subtitle for the book that I'm writing about my first 13 years of my life is how a house shapes your character. You know, and and I remembered how passionately I loved those houses, even though I hated them at the same time. Was that when I found that they were going to be torn down and all the families had moved out, I came on my lunch hour from Johns Hopkins, and I watched the demolition crews go from house to house, and I walked through them to remember the wallpaper and the places in the house, and it was very eerie to have some of the walls caving in or having caved in and creeping through the rubble. And I remember the men would come out and say, "Hey, what is the matter with you? You can't be in here." But
well, Peggy, hold that thought for a minute, because we're going to come back.
Okay, great.
The time has passed so quickly, but we're going to take a short break. Please return and join myself and Peggy in the conversations with Uncrowned Community Builders.
Save a place for me, save a space for me, in your heart, in your heart.
Every year, the United Negro College Fund helps thousands of students go to college. But for everyone we help, there's one we can't. Please support the United Negro College Fund. A mind is a terrible thing to waste.
Hello, and welcome back to They've Got Stories to Tell, Conversations with Uncrowned Community Builders. I'm Barbara Sills-Nevergold, and my guest today is my friend and colleague, and also co-founder of Uncrowned Queens Institute, Dr. Peggy Brooks-Bertram. And as we were closing the last segment, Peggy, you were talking about, you know, the experience that you had back in your old neighborhood. So if you want to finish that up, because we're going to go to talk about Uncrowned Queens.
Yeah, I just want to say that I then decided that I needed to take something from the house to remember it by. And I took one of the cornices of a column of wooden cornice and 12 bricks for the family. And I still have those bricks, the ones that I didn't give, but I did manage to give everyone a brick. And some didn't come or pick one up or so, but I did that.
So that's going to be part of your book, and
Oh, yeah.
yeah, so that we're going to look forward to that, and we're going to talk a little bit perhaps about that in another segment. But I want to go to Uncrowned Queen Sound,
Yeah.
particularly this piece behind us. I don't know if we can see it right now, but we founded the Uncrowned Queens Institute in 1999, and this is a little momentum I picked up because it's indicative of some of the experiences we had as we worked on this organization. But tell us about what motivated us to do this.
Oh my gosh! I think really what motivated us was the fact that the 100th anniversary of the Pan American Exposition was coming up, and in 1999, the city was rolling along trying to get together projects that they would have in order to, to celebrate that Pan American Exposition. And to make a long story short, we managed to become one of the projects with much ado that was going to represent that celebration. And we came across all of the information about that celebration that involved African Americans, or which had attempted to eliminate African Americans from the whole celebration, or to minimize the role that they had. And so we got started as researchers and started looking up what happened, what did African Americans do, who were they, and whatever. And so we naturally we went immediately to the church and to the clubs that black women had, the Phyllis Wheatley Club, Murray Talbot and her activities, the Jesse Nash's father's church. And it was an extraordinary happening. It was just extraordinary.
And this particular, though, memorabilia, a little piece of memorabilia having to do with tops, had to do with, one, their sponsorship of us, but also that sponsorship didn't come easily.
No.
And we did some bizarre things.
Very bizarre. And I recall that, and I really have to say, there were some agencies that really supported us. I mean, they really support, and TOPS was one of them.
Yes.
They supported us for years, and we were so, it was so funny because we were relegated to a place outside of the store, but we were inside, but we were out where the baskets were, where people were putting their cans and bottles in to get their nickels back, and we had to shout over that. And Barbara, you were carrying this small computer,
right?
And a lot of people hadn't seen them 20 years ago, and we had this tiny little screen and showing all these women, and it was just incredible. I mean, people were buying food and stopping and looking at the Uncrowned Queens. It was quite an affair.
Yeah, I'm going to go to the other little piece that I brought here today too, because this represents our work at the university, and the sometimes support. Well, I can't say sometimes. We did get support from the university at one time, tremendous support from the University of Buffalo. But we also had the challenges with that as well.
Yeah. And if we look at the support that we got, eventually we had an office, we got salaries, we didn't have staff working for us, but we had students who volunteered, and it was really quite fascinating. And the fact that we had room in Allen Hall and all the equipment that we needed, and computers, and it was really quite a thing for the university to have done that at that time.
And I want to go quickly to some of the things that we did that certainly still, and I want to say that Uncrowned Queens is still active, not as active as we have been in the last 20 years, but certainly very active. But some of the things we did with respect to books that we published.
Yeah, I think that
page.
I think that we really did some really marvelous things, mostly under duress. Our own time, our own families, our own children. My children were leaving high school and getting ready to go to college. Your children were having children, and you were, taking care of them, and then got involved with the Board of Education. And we wrote maybe 4 or 5 Uncrowned Queens books.
Yes.
And then we had that brilliant experience in Oklahoma where we wrote another book identifying 100 women that no one had written about. It was extraordinary.
And certainly what this is reflective of is our work with Go Tell Michelle.
Go Tell Michelle. And I'll tell you, in 2008, you know, promising the publisher that we would have this book written in 34 days, which we did. It was so exciting. Yes. It was really breathtaking. And I remember us traveling all over the country, from California to Mississippi. And it was quite a time. I mean, no one could have imagined that that's what we would be doing. It was quite extraordinary.
And the fact that, again, our Technopedia,
yes,
which is our signature piece, webpage,
yes,
continues to be used as an educational site, continues to add biographies of men and women whose stories haven't been documented.
And I have to say, you know, to Barbara that, and I haven't said this before, is that I thank you so many times, 1,000 times over, for bearing the weight, for keeping everything active while I ducked down and started writing the book that I currently just finished. And it took a good 4 years.
Well, thank you, Peggy. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I mean,
and that's a wonderful place for us to take a break again.
Yes.
So we're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to come back and we're going to talk to Peggy about what she's been doing over the last year or two. Please come back with us.
3 years or 4.
Along with weight loss, it's one of the many ways to fight osteoarthritis pain. For more information on managing pain, go to Fight Arthritis Pain.
Hello, I'm Barbara Sills Nevergold. Welcome back to They've Got Stories to Tell, Conversations with Uncrowned Community Builders. And my first guest of this inaugural show has been a true Uncrowned community builder, Dr. Peggy Brooks-Bertram.
Thank you.
And we said we were going to talk about your next venture, and actually it's based on the woman, Drusilla Dungy Houston, whose poem inspired us to name our project Uncrowned Queens.
Well, yeah, currently I've finished writing the story of her life, a biography. The title is The Marrow is in the Bones, The Life and Times of Drusilla Dungy Houston. And it's been a long project over the years, many, many years, but I actually sat down to try to pull it together about three and a half years ago, and felt like I kind of disappeared from the scene. I know I did. And I guess if it wasn't for the fact that I had to walk my dog twice a day, I maybe wouldn't have come out. And but Drusilla Dungy Houston, I was introduced to her through Asa Hilliard, who used to be a consultant to the public schools. And I just fell in love with her writing and kind of put it off for years, and finally came to say, well, okay, you know, I need to tell her story. No one else had done that. And
well, tell us about her, because, you know, just as we were inspired by her poem and her, you know, addressing the issue of uncrowned queens, you know, it's significant that here's a woman with tremendous contributions, and at a time when, you know, we talked about segregation during our lifetime, but she most definitely, living at the time that she did, faced all kinds of discrimination, and yet she excelled, and she did tremendous things that we would not think a black woman could do at that time.
She was born in 1876 in Virginia. Her father was also an extraordinary man. And I found that I really couldn't write about her unless I said something about him as well. So I spent a lot of time with that. But she was really significant to the building of the American West. And when I first started, I didn't look at it that way because I didn't understand it like that. But truly, Oklahoma was a part of the American West, and it was considered a southern state. And I didn't know that. And Drusilla and her father and her family went there in 1892 when the land was opened by the Congress and blacks migrated by the thousands from the South to get to the new territory, and the hope was that they would start an all-black city and town and ultimately an all-black state.
That's because Oklahoma didn't become a state till 1907.
1907. And what Drusilla did was she came to the state with an ideology of how she thought black people should live. She lived with it all of her life. It was, you know, it touched the church and education for black people, women's groups, women being financiers, women being educators, women being, you know, entrepreneurs and so forth. And all in all, she was forgotten like the other black women of the American West. No one had written about them. And the movies depicted the Southwest or the West as though no black people had ever been there.
But one of the things that I know about her, and I know that you, in writing her story, will talk about, is the fact that she was a prolific writer as well, and a historian.
And I tell you, what I discovered, luckily, was through her family, because I traveled all around the country to get to meet family members who were like nieces, nephews, uncles, and so forth, and was able to find a number of them and went and spent time with them, went to their family reunions, and finally lucked up to find a niece who was in her 90s when I found her, who invited me to Arizona and then gave me tons of materials that Drusilla Dungy Houston had written that had never seen the light of day.
Oh, that's extraordinary.
And
so I'm
go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt you, but in writing your book, you said it's taken you 3 years or so, but actually you wrote your dissertation, your second dissertation, based on a book that Drusilla had written.
Yeah, and actually the first book she wrote was called Wonderful Ethiopians of the Ancient Kushite Empire. Very difficult little book to write, to read, you know, poorly written in many ways, but clear enough that you can understand it. And so I took it upon myself for a second dissertation to take that book and to see if I could find all the references she had used, though she improperly cited them. And so my project was to walk backwards in her footsteps to find those references, and I was startled to see that I did, and then republished that book, which was volume 1, which I did in 2007, and it's available on the internet, and it's still available.
So you've been living with Drusilla Dungy Houston for a long time.
My children grew up with her, and every time I said her name, my daughter would go, "Oi, no, no," you know. So it's been quite a journey.
But she's been an inspiration for us, most certainly, and as well as for you. When do you plan to have the book ready?
The book is finished now, and I have it out with readers who are taking a look at it, and I'm nervous as all get out, you know, because as I go back through it, you know, on the computer, I, you know, get myself all riled up. Oh God, how could I have forgotten that? Didn't do that. But it's about 450 some pages long.
My.
It's a long book.
And you also said that you have done research on her father.
Oh yeah.
Reverend John Dungy.
Yeah, John Dungy. He was an extraordinary man. Came through Buffalo too, and knew Jesse Nash, his father.
So is another book coming?
Yes, absolutely.
So
actually two. You might as well once you get started, and you get in the groove of doing the research for it. It's you might as well keep on going. You know.
My. Well, we're going to look forward to that, Peggy, and actually we need to spend more time, I think, talking about all of these things you're doing, because it's very exciting, and again, it's cutting edge.
Oh yeah.
It's absolutely cutting edge, and I admire that your tenacity in doing that, you know, and putting your head down, because so often people come up with the finished product, which you will soon, and people think that they just did it overnight.
Oh, no. And you get fat while you're doing it. Trust me. You try not to, but things you never ate before, you'll try.
I know. Well, this time has gone by so quickly, and I want to thank you again so much for being the first guest here, for you know, taking the plunge with me. And I want to tell our viewers that this has been They've Got Stories to Tell, Conversations with Uncrowned Community Builders a program of the Uncrowned Queens Institute. I want you to visit our website at www.uncrownedcommunitybuilders.com to learn about the lives and contributions of uncrowned queens and kings. And you can also watch this program on YouTube. Thanks for joining us. We look forward to your returning and spending another day with us on this program. Thank you.
Thank you.